Get Macy's lowest prices of the season on great fall specials, like glamorous diamond pendants and earrings to complete any look. Now 60% off. And get ready for cooler nights ahead with 65% off Charter Club Damask sheets and bedding, now at Macy's. Plus, get your Macy's order faster when you pick up curbside or in store. Or try same-day delivery powered by DoorDash. Savings off sale and clearance prices. Exclusions apply.
Hi, it's Elise Lunan, host of Pulling the Thread. In this show, I chat with culture-defining leaders, thinkers, and experts about this rare moment that we find ourselves in and how to think about our own lives and experiences within a larger social and spiritual construct. Listen and follow Pulling the Thread with me, Elise Lunan, a podcast presentation of Cadence 13, now for free on Odyssey and wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Joe DeCamera and John Ritchie on 94 WIP. Our next guest, Paul Charson, he talks fantasy football with us every week at this time. He is brought to you by Parks Casino and Sportsbook, which John Ritchie will tell you all about. John, if you would, sir. Right here, my man. Paul Charson from GuillotineLeagues.com.
Paul's brought to you by the Parks Casino and Sportsbook. New customers get your first bet risk-free up to $500. ParksCasino.com/PA. You must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
And I saw a very interesting note from Paul on Twitter, which indicates that the Eagles quarterback, who may or may not be their future franchise quarterback, is his number one rated quarterback this week in fantasy football. Paul, how far he has come. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, I think I think the three of us talked about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and at that point, we weren't even sure that Jalen Hurts was going to be the starting quarterback at the end of the year. And I think that game he just played was his best game of the year. And
right,
you know, you can't tell.
Paul, he's definitely going to be the starter the rest of the way. That is for sure. Yeah,
I totally agree. Things have changed so much, and you can't tell from the box score. But you know, for people who watch the game, and obviously everybody listening here did watch the game, but the poise, the control that he's got, the decision-making and the accuracy they've all changed so much over the course of the last month. I'm just so much happier with where he is as a passer than where we were a month ago. Yeah. And this matchup is really positive. The Saints are not the same pass defense they were. And Marshawn Lattimore, who was a really promising young cornerback, just getting roasted right now. And he's giving up 75 yards in his coverage every game. It's nuts. A strong advantage here, Devonta Smith. And then they've also given up quarterback rushing touchdowns in consecutive games. Sure. So the running should be – I love Hurts this week. What do you think, guys? Am I on track?
Listen, he's obviously a guy, if you have him, you start him. So 100%. And I think, look, he's put up big numbers. Paul, let's get to –
I love Jalen's approach to football and the way he works to get better, but – Paul, ranking him first is
it's the rushing,
aggressive.
John. It's the rushing.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
He gets a ton of rushing touchdowns and a ton of rushing yards. I mean, that's what
he'll probably get double-digit carries every week for every game he plays, and so that does really boost him.
He's a fantasy dynamo. Now, Paul, let's get to a guy that had a lot of fantasy success for about a decade. He's back in football, and the question is whether to start Cam Newton in fantasy football this week. How do you assess Cam now back with Carolina?
This is so fascinating, right? So he's on the Panthers for like 2 days, and then he shows up at Bank of America Stadium and walks on the field like he owns the place. He's leading the sideline huddles. Players are rallying around him, and the Panthers get their best win of the season. And now here he is just days later, and he's your starter. And it's Washington, arguably the worst pass defense in the league. They're 29th in passing yards allowed. They're dead last in passing touchdowns allowed. So it feels like a nice opportunity for Cam and a very soft landing spot for him. But here's what I think makes it fascinating. There's also a matchup against his old coach, Ron Rivera. He knows where all the bodies are buried in Cam's play. He knows how to beat Cam. So this is going to be fascinating to see how this thing plays itself out. And the variation of possible outcomes is absolutely huge here. If it's the same Cam that we saw throw 8 touchdowns in a season last year and get benched 3 times, he could do nothing in this game. But if it's the same Cam that we saw last week that scored 2 touchdowns in 9 plays, 9 snaps, and faces a terrible Washington secondary, the upside's tremendous. So this thing could go any direction. I'm starting Cam in one league on the hunch that he does well here, and he's going to run a little bit, but fascinating how this could play out.
What about another quarterback that likes to gain yardage on the ground? Justin Fields had a couple good games. Has he become startable at this point?
I think in a pinch he is startable, and maybe even this week. And the two games were good. Niners game, he had 100 rushing yards and a 70% completion rate. That was good. Then he saw the Steelers, threw for almost 300 yards and got better as the game went on. And now he gets Baltimore. Shockingly, giving up the most passing yards in the league, which we don't ever associate with Baltimore. They've given up 400 passing yard games this year, and he's not going to touch that. But the big thing on Fields, though, he normally is the lowest output passer, averaging just 24 attempts per game. But the Ravens are seeing 36 passes per game. So with the extra volume, I think Fields could fill a box score, and I've got him ranked as my number 16 quarterback this week, which means for a lot of people, he's starter worthy.
Paul Charchian with us again, GuillotineLeagues.com. All right, Paul, we always start and didn't today on Thursday Night Football. What are we looking at for tonight?
Well, a couple things. Ramondre Stevenson had the huge game last week, and there's a temptation to go right back to him here, but Damian Harris is back. He's cleared the concussion protocol. He'll be the starter, and you'll certainly want to play Harris. But I think you can still go with Stevenson because Stevenson's role had been increasing anyway, and it's almost to the point of being 60-40 with Harris, but he's also turned into the pass-catching back. With James White on IR all season, his lost season, they're throwing to Stevenson some, and Atlanta's giving up the 6th most rushing attempts. Both guys are going to get fed, and in a pinch, I think you can start Stevenson in this game.
What about Atlanta's offense without Cordero Patterson? Who do you focus on for fantasy?
Nobody. John, there's just what's left of this thing. The running game has been a disaster, except for Cordero Patterson, and he's not expected to play. Mike Davis, there's a stat called rushing yards over expectation, where Next Gen Stats looks at the play and goes, here's what we expect you to get, and here's the yards that the player got. Mike Davis's yards over expectation are negative 83 this year. He's under expectation, so that doesn't work. No Calvin Ridley to pass to, no Cordero Patterson to pass to. Bill Belichick probably takes away Kyle Pitts, and now Matt Ryan's got to scrape his way to victory with Olamide Zaccheaus and Tajay Sharp. It's not happening. I don't think there's a single Falcon worth playing.
Paul, is there a certain point in a season where if you know you're going to make the playoffs, you think it's smart for a league owner to start gearing up for playoff possibilities, picking up a defense or just anything that can give you an edge in the postseason in fantasy football, which, of course, is only a couple weeks away?
Are you asking for a friend? Are you asking for yourself?
Well, I got 3 defenses right now, so I'm set, but I'm asking for everyone else right now that might not.
3 defenses.
I like it. Yes.
By the way, that's what happens when Quez Watkins gives you no fantasy points almost every week, so you eventually just cut him.
And how about that drop last week in the end zone?
I know, but you know what? Most of this year, Paul, we can tell you up close, most of it's not his fault. They just never throw him the ball.
Which is strange, isn't it? Because he's so dynamic.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, he's like 3 targets a game.
Yeah.
Man, I don't understand.
I couldn't take it. I mean, from a fantasy perspective, I couldn't. I literally cut him earlier today because he just never was doing anything. But Paul, when do you start gearing up for the playoffs if you feel pretty confident you're going to make it?
As soon as you feel confident you're in, your whole focus of your team should be your playoff weeks, which for most of us now is 15, 16, 17. Those are the only weeks that you care about. So you should be already massaging your roster. And especially with the trading deadline coming up, you make bad trades now that might hurt you in the short term because you love what guys have in 15, 16, 17. If you're going to the playoffs, that's all you care about. Take your losses now so you can start analyzing the schedule and looking for the players you like most in those weeks. I don't have that in front of me, and I wish I did. Maybe we'll do that for another segment, another week. But that's absolutely, the time is now.
Joe's been jumping the gun, excited to win the regular season all year long, so he's already thinking playoffs. Do you recommend that fantasy teams carry 3 defenses like Joe is doing right now, Paul?
No,
probably
you
not.
don't need.
But the Packers' defense does look incredible. Do you dare start Vikings against Green Bay?
Yeah, this is a big matchup, and holy cow, the Packers have turned into the league's most hostile pass defense. Over the past 3 weeks, they've seen Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, and Russell Wilson. They averaged 199 passing yards and 0.3 touchdowns. They have one passing touchdown between them. That's it. Green Bay ranks number 1 in completion percentage, number 2 in yards per attempt. And here comes Minnesota. And the best way to shut down Kirk Cousins is to get pressure on him, at which point he gets skittish and he just throws checkdowns. And the Packers pass rush has been phenomenal. They've got a fantastic defensive lineman named Rashawn Gary, who's been quietly like a defensive MVP candidate this year. He may not go in this one, but especially if he does, I worry that Cousins won't have time to get to his receivers downfield, and I don't like many Vikings outside of Dalvin Cook.
All right, Paul, and what about sleepers this week? What are we looking at for Week 11?
I got 2 Titans for you. This is an offense that's in major flux with injuries and different problems. At the running back position, we assumed that it was going to be a lot of Adrian Peterson, but it hasn't worked out that way. Dante Foreman, back from the dead, has turned into their lead rusher. And here comes the Texans, allowing the 2nd most rushing yards, 4th most rushing touchdowns per game. They've shut down like half their defense, their starters. They're totally ravaged. Dante Foreman's the guy you want there. And then they've got a receiver filling in for Julio Jones that nobody knows, named Marcus Johnson. 100-yard game last week, high target percentage because there's really nobody else to even throw to there. And Houston's secondary is also terrible. They've given up 6 receiver scores in the last 4 games. So in a pinch, there's 2 guys you can pick up the waiver wire, both Titans that have a chance to play well.
Paul, great stuff. Everyone follow Paul all season long. You can get involved at guillotineleagues.com. Paul, wonderful stuff, bud. Thanks, man.
Thanks, my friends. We'll talk to you in a week. Bye-bye.
All right, there he is, Paul Charchian. 215-592-9490. We're coming up in addition to all the topics we've been talking about. An interesting commentary I want to throw into the mix. Spike Eskin a couple days ago on the station had a commentary and a commercial break about Tyrese Maxey, and I found it interesting, I'll say. What to make of what Spike said? We'll play the audio and react together. Joe DeCamera and John Ritchie on 94 WIP.
Love It or Leave It is an insanely funny, wildly popular, critically beloved, extremely handsome podcast hosted by former Obama speechwriter John Lovett on Crooked Media. Each week, Lovett, that's me, is joined by comedians, journalists, activists, elected officials, and more to break down the latest news with humor, analysis, and light optimism wherever applicable. New episodes drop every Saturday morning. Listen on Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen.
Get Macy's lowest prices of the season on specials for cooler weather, like cute boots and booties starting at $27.99. And warm new coats for all, 50 to 60% off. And get cafe-style coffee at your fingertips with select Nespresso bundles for only $124.99, now at Macy's. Plus, get your Macy's order faster when you pick up curbside or in store. Or try same-day delivery powered by DoorDash. Savings off sale and clearance prices, exclusions apply.
You've served your country, you're completing your military duty and transitioning back to civilian life, and you've got questions. ConnectingVets.com is waiting to help navigate your return. Find out how to use your GI Bill for education, certifications for today's job market, transitional jobs, and more. ConnectingVets.com even helps the children and family of service members. You served your country with honor, and you deserve the benefits that come with service. Find job and education resources and much more at ConnectingVets.com.